Hello, and welcome back to week 2 of the Oh Happy Day Sampler Sew Along. Today we are going to be making a block from the Friends Forever quilt in the Oh Happy Day book. Now I am going to be showing you exactly how to make this block as it's outlined in the book, which means we are going to end up with 2 blocks today. We are going to be using just one for our sampler quilt. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If you're familiar with this book and you've perused this quilt, you know that this quilt is a 2-for-1 quilt, meaning that we are making the main quilt, this one right behind me, and as we are making that quilt, we are going to end up with cutoffs with which we can make a second quilt. I love this idea in quilt patterns. You will see it every now and then. And when I was designing this quilt and naming it Friends Forever, it just reminded me of those little heart-shaped friendship necklaces maybe you and your best friend had back in junior high, where one of you got the one half of the necklace and the other one got the other half of the necklace. This is like the quilt version of that same idea. So we are going to use the main block in our sampler quilt, and the second block you could use for whatever you wanted. You could easily turn that into a pillow, you could turn it into a pot holder or a journal cover, or maybe a block for a patchwork bag. Whatever project you want to use it for, you could, and if you wanted to gift that to a friend, you could certainly do that as well. So those are the 2 quilts that are made in the Friends Forever project. And then of course we have the pillow that the instructions are in the book for as well. So this pillow uses my Cozy Up line of fabric. And this little block that you see right here, this is the 12-inch block, and this is the block that we will be making for our sampler quilt. Behind me, these 2 quilts are made using Spring Brook. Now, if you wanted to use a similar fabric palette, my Buttercup and Slate fabrics that are out in stores right now would be a wonderful substitute for this fabric collection behind me. Let's go ahead and I will tell you what fabrics you need to cut for your block. Go ahead and grab your Oh Happy Day book and turn to page 26. I am going to show you the prints that I am using in the order that they are listed underneath the materials section on that page, on page 26. You are going to need 3 print squares. Then you will need 1 slightly smaller print square. You need a medium rectangle, and then you need a larger rectangle. From your background fabrics, those listed under white solid, you are going to need 3 small squares, and then you need 1 larger background square. I am using the white on white flower print from my Buttercup and Slate collection for my background fabrics. Turning to page 22 in your Oh Happy Day book is where you're going to find the piecing instructions for this block. The first thing that we need to do is we need to make half square triangles. Now you can see that I have already gone ahead and marked the diagonal lines on the back of my white on white small background squares. Those get paired together with these 3 print squares, and we are going to be making half square triangles. So I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine. I'm going to sew on both of my marked diagonal lines, and I am going to do that for all of these background and print squares. This will cause me to end up with 6 half square triangles. You will trim them down to the measurement listed under step 1 on page 22. And you will be using 3 of them for this block. We want this to be a scrappy block, so we're going to end up making a couple more half square triangles than we are actually going to need so that our block is very scrappy. Let me go make my half square triangles. And my half square triangles are done. I have trimmed them according to that measurement on page 22. I did want to mention that if you are making the whole main quilt, as you see behind me, you would be using all of the half square triangles that you're making. It's just because we're making one block, we want it to be scrappy, so we need a variety of fabrics, that we end up using just half of the half square triangles that we are making. The other thing I wanted to mention is since we are just making one block, we can change our pressing instructions instructions just a little bit. When you're making the full quilt, you need to press your seams open because of the way the blocks twist and turn throughout the quilt. But since we're making just one block, we can get away with pressing our seams to one side, which I love because I really enjoy pressing to one side. So on my half square triangles down here, I have pressed everything towards the dark fabric. And now I've laid everything out to continue sewing the block together, and I am going to continue pressing slightly differently. So when I sew these together, I am going to press this bottom row. I'm going to press these all to the right. I'm going to press this row to the left, and our top row doesn't need any pressing just yet. So I'm going to sew the rows together, and then I'm going to sew together all of the units, and I will pop back over here and show you what that pressing looks like from the back. The block is sewn together. Let's take a look at the pressing. So as you can see in this center row, I pressed towards the half square triangle. In the bottom row, I pressed away from the half square triangles. And then when I pressed everything together, I pressed the block up. These seams are going to naturally want to go towards these solid pieces of fabric, so it lays very nicely just to press that up. Now, the next step that we need to do, this can be found on page 23 of your book, and we are going to be sewing together our larger background square with this pieced block. I have marked a diagonal line from corner to corner on the back of this large square, and then I've measured over 1/2 inch with my ruler. Let me show you how that looks. Let me grab my ruler here. So I've marked my diagonal line here, and then measuring 1/2 inch away from that diagonal, I've marked my second line right there. And then what you're going to want to do, make sure you have your block oriented just like I do. You want to have these half square triangles in the lower left corner here. And then you're going to take this larger background square, place it right on top, right sides together. And you want the diagonal running from corner to corner, and this second marked line needs to be on the top right side of this block. You'll take it over to the sewing machine and sew on both of those two lines, and then just as you do when you're making a half square triangle, you trim 1/4 inch away from either of these two lines. So right down the center of this line, after you've sewn, you are going to cut this apart. I will show you what I'm talking about. Let me go sew this and I will be right back. I've sewn on those two marked lines, and now I just need to cut this apart. So I am going to place my 1/4 inch right on that diagonal. So I am cutting apart 1/4 inch away from my diagonal, and it's also 1/4 inch away from that second seam there. Then I'm just going to cut these apart. And I'm left with these two pieces here. And then you can see this is the main block. When you open that up, it makes a unit like this. And then the bonus block makes the other unit. So all I need to do now is press these. I'm going to press towards my background fabric. That's the way this block is going to naturally want to go. So I will press towards the background fabric. This larger piece is the one here. This is the one that we will be using in our sampler, and you can trim this to 12.5 inches square. And here we go. We've got our blocks all done. These are pressed and ready to go. This is the block that we will be using in our sampler. I found I didn't need to trim it up. It was 12.5 inches on the nose, so it is ready to go. And then we have a fun bonus block that we can use in whatever project we might want to. I mentioned a couple of uses that we could use it for at the beginning of the video, but if you have something else that you want to use it for, you can go right ahead. It's always fun to have a little extra block because we never know when we might want to make a fun extra project. I hope you have enjoyed this video and that it was helpful for you. Next week, I will be sharing block number 3 for our sampler sew along, and I look forward to being back with you guys again then. See you later.